Hello everybody, it's GirlGotGame and welcome back to Gilded Shadows for our final route, the very sassy Dr. Sasaki. I am so excited. I've been so curious about this guy. I love him. As I said, he's sassy. And it's been a little while since we've been in Endgame, so we're ending where we began this whole journey, back in Endgame. Don't know what we're gonna get from YUU's route, but it should be interesting. Alright, we've barred ourselves up in here, and oh, also, before we really get into it, Morgan's traits for this route are cautious, stubborn, and analytical. So, there you go. We are in the common route for, or not common route, but the interlude for Endgame. Let's start branching from here. Let's pick that doctor from the hallway, shall we? YUU's route should be played after at least one other endgame route. I think we've done that, so should be safe to go. Excuse me, you cannot start the whole thing with just like, hello, here's my CG. Here's my introductory CG. Alright, I see you, YUU. Starting off strong. I like it, I like it. The blonde doctor I somewhat remembered passing in the hall. He was looking over his shoulder as he entered, not at me. I scrambled for something to fend him off with. I wonder which of the guys is talking to her. Probably either Caleb or Ari.
Doctor, you might want to... Want to what? Continue waiting for one of you fools to actually do something useful. Just how long am I to wait? One of my patients is in danger, and I'm tired of waiting for the elites to do something about it. We're trying to avoid frightening her.
I couldn't see him well silhouetted against the light outside. He rested one hand on the door and continued to snap at the people in the hall, and I had nowhere to go to get away from him. He hadn't opened the door wide enough for me to slip past him. And even if I did, there were people. Hello, YUU. The doctor turned to me again and I scrambled away, wrapping my arms around myself.
Well done. She looks perfectly calm and not at all terrified out of her mind. You will have to enlighten me as to your techniques later. Perhaps we can write a medical journal on them.
Only silence in return. The man took a step further into the room and I launched a small canister I had ready. He moved aside, and it smacked into the wall behind him with a pathetic thump. Can't let him get to me. I didn't even know anymore why I couldn't do that. He came towards me, his slight form partially blocking the light filtering in from the hall. Stay back!
I fear I cannot do that, but I will stop here for now.
He crouched down a few feet from me.
From your adverse reaction, I assume you have no recollection of me either, then.
Who are you?
I am Dr. YUU Sasaki, the chief medic of Endgame. And you are my very ill patient, Morgan Leone.
Where?
You are currently in an empty room, not receiving the treatment you should be. That's where. However, given the context, I presume you're more interested in your geographical location, which is Core Solaris, the Endgame headquarters. Medical wing.
When he reached a hand out, I jolted back. My skull slammed into the wall, sending daggers of pain through me, and I curled over, clutching the back of my head. He sighed once more.
Morgan Leone, one of the first oaths I took as a doctor was to do no harm. You are safe as long as you are in my care. I would prefer if you did not concuss yourself trying to escape a mere temperature check.
I squinted up at him as his hand settled on my forehead. His fingers were cool against my fevered skin. I caught his wrist and held it there. Feels nice. Doctor, I want to go home.
You must recover before further talk of your future.
I barely registered what he said. Your hand is cold. He moved it carefully to my cheek, pressing the back of his knuckles there. I shut my eyes, remembering the way my mum used to check my temperature the same way. Aw.
I believe it is your face that is abnormal. My dorsal and palmar hand temperature is within the normal range. Your face is flushed and warm to the touch, indicating a high febrile response. You must return to your room.
His voice had faded to a buzz, and I barely even knew what he was saying anymore, so I didn't answer. Don't worry, even if you weren't having a buzz in your head, it probably would have been a lot anyway. I forgot that YUU uses a lot of technical medical jargon, so this will be fun. My eyes shut and I swayed under the dizziness and exhaustion. There was a rustle of fabric and the faint scent of soap and aftershave as he pulled me close. I wanted to struggle, but didn't have the strength. Despite how slight he had seemed, he lifted me easily, keeping me tight against his body as he stood. You'll be getting that bridal carry? Yo, you starting up with that bridal carry, though? I'm okay with this.
We'll return you to your room. I'll have to order 275 ml of proferin for the fever. We'll need to check the status of her phoric system and... Out of the way, all of you! Ariel, find a stretcher for her right away.
I squeezed my eyes shut tighter at the sensation of bright lights behind my lids when he moved into the hall. Hurts.
Then I will prescribe an analgesic when we return to your room.
I hate doctors. Just so you know.
I am not terribly fond of problem patients. Nevertheless, I will ensure you are taken care of to the best of my ability until you make a full recovery.
She's like, I don't like doctors. What? I didn't know how long he carried me, but it didn't feel like much time passed before I was being laid down on a narrow surface and covered. Even if the need to get away was lingering, I couldn't do anything but sleep. The doctor's voice was a dull murmur ever present as I laid there in hazy consciousness, only somewhat aware I was being wheeled back down the halls I'd run through earlier. Before I finally blacked out again, I felt that cold hand back on my forehead. And then I was asleep again. Ooh! Purple! My favorite color. Okay, you. Man, coming out with the CG and the purple? I see you. Chapter 1. Stumbling Forward. 4 weeks later. Wow, okay, we had a bit of a skip. I tipped my head back, letting the hot water soak my hair as I pulled my fingers through it, scrubbing my scalp. The steaming water streamed down over me, eliciting a sigh even as it rinsed away the soap. But not the fatigue left by a long day of training. Training, or torture, depending whether you were asking me or the people training me. Each day seemed to leave me more and more exhausted by the time I returned to my flat. If I thought exam period in New Albion was tough, it was nothing compared to running around an outdoor track with Caleb at my heels, barking for me to pace myself. Okay, so Caleb's training you. This is nice, I gotta say, because we've done Endgame a few times by this point, so for there to be a time skip where it's like, okay, we know that we're over the, like, this is why we brought you here, and you're gonna be trained, and this is who's gonna train you, and blah blah blah, like, she's already in it, so. Or seeing Ari's disappointed expression when I teleported myself face first into yet another wall from across the compound. Disappointed Dad Ari. Something that never failed to make Caleb laugh. Apparently my failures were funny when he wasn't the one in charge at the time it happened. Ugh. I still wanted to dislike him, but more than a month after my arrival, even I had to admit he wasn't as bad as my initial impressions suggested. Usually. Vanessa Scott, the bishop I'd met the day they rescued me from Jack Visser, was the only one I could say was fun to work with, though. If only because her antics always had either Caleb or Ari groaning at us in exasperation, which made it even more satisfying. Though sometimes their frustration was a reminder of the pressure to prove myself to an entire organization of people waiting with bated breath to see what this newbie queen was capable of. Of course, their satisfaction when I succeeded led to more or less the same outcome. Maybe even a worse outcome, as every success increased expectations. I was no stranger to pressure, so that part wasn't too bad. But beyond the exhaustion was the frustration of knowing this wasn't what I wanted, and that I wouldn't even be here if I didn't have to be. I was a danger to myself and others, supposedly. So now I was here. Those feelings were a lurking menace that liked to ambush me with hopelessness when I was alone or when I was tired. Which was happening more and more lately. But I was settling into my role at Endgame a little more each day, like it or not. Or at least I was settling into the idea of being at this location. But sometimes I thought that telling myself that was just a way of keeping myself sane. I shut the water off, wiping my face and wringing my hair out carefully before reaching for a towel. One thing was true, though. Since coming here, I was learning a lot about this side of the world. This Esper community I was a part of. The ins and outs, the struggles. I had yet to discover many benefits to it, though. Unless Vaughn's jokes counted. I grabbed an extra towel on my way into my room so I could sit on the bed and dry my hair as I went through my messages. Another from Mum. Okay, so she's already, earned the trust of the council and's got, access to messages. That's nice. A smile came to my face. I was so glad I could talk to her again. My access had been cut off for my first couple of weeks, and I had to fight to get it back. Well, some of the others helped me fight for it too, actually. Something I was very grateful for. Being able to message Mum and Dad, hear their voices. It made it so much easier to cope with all this. There was no denying it had been a rough first week. Logically, I knew I couldn't change the events that brought me here. I couldn't change public policy. I couldn't change that I was an Esper. But knowing something logically and processing it emotionally weren't quite the same thing. Even so, the futility of what it would be like to fight it had weighed on me for a while. I spent the first week in what I thought was quiet contemplation as I mulled over my options. It wasn't until a counselor showed up at the infirmary that I realized they thought I was despondent and depressed. It's not that I wasn't sad, but that day I'd been very much considering how possible it would be to escape. Not that I told anyone that, though. I flopped back on the bed, staring at the ceiling as I wondered if this place had a masseuse. I'd never been to a masseuse in my life, but I felt like I needed one if I was going to survive this training. I rolled over, glaring at nothing. Another message caught my eye, and I opened it with annoyance, even though I knew what it said. The council rejected another request to speak to them. Okay, girl's still working on that in this route. Jerks. They'd been avoiding me since our last meeting, a term I used loosely because it wasn't like we met in person. They hid behind a monitor with their faces obscured, while I felt like I was being put on display for them. The only times I'd had discussions with them, they'd done nothing but accuse me of attempting to skirt Esper laws by hiding what I was. Which was true. And I didn't have a response to that one, besides being annoyed at their insistence they had the legal right to apprehend me and retain me at their facility, which is not true. But I hated being treated like a criminal, and even more annoying than that, I was beginning to realize was being ignored. I'm tired. I forced myself to sit up and finish drying off, because I was just going to descend back into that melancholic emptiness if I stayed like this. I should make some tea, and then maybe respond to Mum. Or call her. Ah, the new apartment. Okay. So, Morgan, are you going to tell me if they gave you, your old apartment to start with, or did they just put you straight into the new one? It's not that bad. The new schedule is a little grueling. I have a lot to catch up on, as you can imagine. I think they're trying to at least get me up to the level of an average, 12-year-old.
This Caleb person sounds terrible. When are you going to know enough Psy to beat him up?
Yeah, Mom, you get it. Mother, I am not beating anyone up.
Why not? Isn't that what they're training you to do?
I think they would deny that. And if they acknowledged it, I have a feeling Ari would dutifully point out that the goal is not for me to beat up my teammates, but criminals.
Too bad your teammates are a bunch of kidnappers.
Do we have to have the arrest versus kidnapping discussion again? I've had it with so many times with Magnus at this point that I don't think I can do it again. And, for the record, Caleb isn't terrible outside of training. Just while he's running behind me on the track and yelling for me to run faster.
You should elbow him in the face again the next time he tells you to run faster. Didn't you say you elbowed him in the face once?
I love that Mom is so anti-Caleb. I laughed, curling up on the sofa in my flat and looking out over the city as we chatted. I elbowed Magnus Ulrich in the face.
No wonder he keeps saying they arrested you. Honestly, why would you elbow him? He's quite good looking. I've seen his picture. I hope you didn't damage his face.
I love Mom. Mom is me. Why would you elbow Magnus of all people? He's gorgeous.
What's he like in person?
When he's not concussed from an elbow to the head? Eccentric. Very.
The cute ones always are.
Mm-hmm. I held in another laugh as I listened to her tell Dad which cute man I'd elbowed in the head. As always, hearing her voice made me feel better, and helped stave off the frustration. There was a brief pause before she spoke again, worry creeping back into her voice.
Are you really okay, sweetie? It must be so lonely there.
It's not that lonely. There are tons of people at Core Solaris. I've been able to get to know a lot of them, not just my team members. There are some junior agents who are fun to talk to. They're a little younger, but sometimes it's easier to relate to them than the elites who've been doing this for a while. Some of them were wary of me at first, but I feel like they've gotten over that. And look, Vaughn, Ari, and Caleb are still spending a lot of time with me outside of work, which I also appreciate.
That's not the same as having friends, Morgan. Don't you miss your friends?
Mom, I spent all my time studying in New Albion. I had no friends before I came here.
There was
Mom, please, let's not bring him up. It's hard to say someone I didn't hear from for a year is a friend.
Sweetie, I'm just worried about you.
I know you are, but please don't be. Right now, we're just trying to get me to a point I don't accidentally blow things up with my mind. Again. I'm lucky they haven't docked my pay for that hospital room I destroyed.
I can't imagine you destroying anything, much less an entire room. I'm glad they're paying you, though.
I mean, that's pretty much a given, you know?
Well, I have my thoughts about the fact you have to be there at all, regardless if you're getting a salary.
I've heard all about those thoughts. Several times.
If they'd let me speak to Magnus Ulrich, he'd have heard them too. Several times. They're not even thinking about your degree or plans. You made prime tier, and that means nothing at Endgame. That bothers me.
I had to stop myself from flinching when she mentioned that, because it still bothered me as well. But that was the whole futility thing again. They had things like regulations and laws and legal rights to fling at me. All I had was the inability to honestly say I hadn't violated those laws to avoid coming here. Well, something like a degree is low priority for now, yes. On the bright side, Endgame has one of the most advanced research facilities on the planet, and they study everything from the intricacies of the nanosystem to array and relics and the history of Arcalis. Even if my university exam scores mean little here, it's important to remember that I have options when it gets to the point of deciding my path forward.
Not the options you wanted.
I know that. Believe me, I know. But even so, I'm not going to let them push me to some career path I hate. Even if I can't go off-world to Dione anymore, I can at least get into the research division here. I'm sure I can find a project I'm interested in there.
As long as you don't let them push you around.
I won't, I promise.
I just don't want you doing something dangerous while you're there.
Off-world trips to ancient ruins aren't always safe either, Mum. But I know what you mean.
I just wish we were there so I could help more. Getting into Brazil is so difficult, though. think it would be easier. My daughter is the queen! That has to count for something.
I leaned my elbow on the back of the sofa, biting back a laugh. Mom, I'm a queen rank. That doesn't make me the queen of Bracel.
Well, maybe it should.
She let out a deep sigh.
Oh, as much as I would like to keep talking, I should let you go. It's close to dinner time, and I'm sure you need to have something to eat. You are eating properly, aren't you?
Yes, Dr. Laban has been meticulous about my nutrition plan. And if I miss meals, I get a lecture. Yeah, I'm like, who's Laban?
Laban? Wasn't your doctor there someone else? Sasaki or something?
I told you Dr. Sasaki transferred me to someone else after I'd been here a few days. You, how could you? He had another project to focus on and couldn't spend time managing my care once I'd mostly recovered.
I hope this new doctor is good then.
I like her. She's very knowledgeable and listens to me really well.
Okay, good. Then I'll head off so you can go eat and avoid being lectured. I'll talk to you soon, I hope.
Of course. Tell everyone I said hi.
I will. I love you, Morgan.
Love you too.
Bye, sweetie.
Bye, Mum. When the connection cut, I flopped over and buried my face in a sofa cushion with a soft groan. I was glad we'd talked. Her voice always helped calm me down, ground me a bit, and make things better. It was obvious she could sense the discontent in my voice when we talked, the hesitance. And as she pointed out, the loneliness. But getting used to all this change was going to remain a work in progress for a while. I couldn't be open with her about the uphill battle I faced to do something as simple as avoid active field duty and relocate to the research division, because that would just worry her more. But I had a feeling she already knew it wasn't as easy as I made it out to be. I thrust the cushion away and, with a slight yawn, got to my feet. Deciding to keep my word, I thought I'd have dinner in the lounge for a change. It would be nice to be around people.